Welcome to CJ Winter How-To video series. Here at CJ Winter, we provide better tools, fast delivery, great service, and value. The overview will outline process, list the tools you will need, and show you how to get it done with our step-by-step video series. Today we're going to be working on a 192 spline attachment operation. We'll be loading the spline rolls and master pinions. We'll be setting the attachment to run the initial part, and then verifying the master pinion engagement. We will also be setting the gear alignment and showing how to clean and lubricate the assembly as part of the maintenance portion. The tools we will need today are 9/64, 3/32, and 3/16 Allen wrenches, a 9/16 socket or box wrench, as well as we're going to be using some Mobile One SHC grease to lubricate the assembly. And we'll also need 60 thousandths gauge pins to help set the gears. So let's begin with inserting the roll splines into the attachment. The first thing we do is we remove the 3 socket head scap screws that hold the front plate of the attachment. So basically, after those are removed, the front plates should slip right off the pins that holds it. And make sure that we add some of that Mobile One grease to the ID of the rolls. A little goes a long way. Basically, this makes sure that things are lubricated properly and provides a good surface between the ID of the roll and the carbide bushing that the roll goes on. After we do that, we replace the front plate, making sure that the 3 washers that are on there stay. Basically, we got some of that Mobile One grease that are holding those washers onto the face, and we just want to make sure that those are on there. And so we slip the front plate back on. It should slide right in. Wait a little bit, make sure it locates completely down, and then we replace the 3 socket head cap screws. And then a couple of times we're making sure the roll splines still rotate freely prior to and after tightening the 3 socket head cap screws holding the front plate. The next thing we're going to do is loosen the 3 hex screws at the bottom of the assembly, and that allows us to turn the top half of the attachment assembly from the bottom half, and that action actually moves the eccentric pins that are inside or locating the spline rolls in and out, and allows us to adjust the finish center position accordingly. So we open the attachment up completely, and that's a sample part the customers provided to set the attachment. So we basically open up the attachment and then we shut it on the part. So once it's in there, we'll rotate the part, make sure the part and the roll splines are rotating accordingly. So basically, we're going to make sure that the part is located in there axially, and as we turn the part, the spline rolls are turning as well. What we do next is we basically pull the part out carefully, and then we use the micrometer markings on the side of the attachment to move the adjustment about half of a increment closed to close it, and then we tighten up the 3 9/16 hex bolts on the bottom of the attachment. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the master pinion into the attachment and make sure that it's aligned and functional. There's an axial setting to the master pinion that we also got to take care of. So first you remove the socket head cap screw that holds the pinion, and basically that shaft where you mount the pinion rotates about that shaft. So there's a washer and socket head cap screw that kind of hold that together. Put a little bit of the Mobile One grease. A little bit goes a long way onto the shaft. So we'll put the gear or the master pinion onto the shaft. So there's a counterbar on both sides. Snug up the socket head cap screw. And make sure that the master pinion turns freely. The other thing we want to note on the shaft is there's a hole on the shaft just on the bottom of the master pinion, and what that is basically when you plumb in your tube for your coolant, the coolant goes through that shaft, comes out of that hole, and then irrigates the entire assembly and flushes everything out. So basically flip the attachment upside down and put a little bit of that grease on the threads. So the master pinion and the spline rolls have a slight taper on there. So axially you'll be able to engage the master pinion into the spline rolls, and that's basically what maintains this everything in sync. It's almost like a gear train, if you will, between the master pinion, which represents your final part geometry, and the spline rolls. And that's how we're able to achieve the accuracy in generating the splines during the rolling process. We keep advancing the master pinion axially into the spline rolls until the spline rolls don't turn anymore. Like we said earlier, there's a taper on the master pinion as well as on the spline rolls. As you engage those two axially, they'll bind. So we'll go until it binds, and then we'll back the master pinion out half a turn or a turn. Paul, what do you usually try to set?
I used to do about a turn.
So you back it up about a turn. So in order to lock and make sure everything turns freely, and then what we do is we need to lock the rotation of the master pinion position axially, and we do this with basically it's a little star washer that has some cutouts that locate a set screw onto a threaded hole on the face of that shaft. So with the set screw, screw it in and just snug it up, and we're ready to go. So we're going to show you how to set the gear alignment and clean and lubricate the 192 ES spline attachment as part of the maintenance portion. First thing we do is we remove the set screw and the lock washer for the master pinion assembly. Unscrew that out completely. Set that aside. Then we remove the front plate of the attachment assembly by taking out the 3 socket head cap screws. As well as the 3 hex bolts on the bottom. Remove the top plate. Set it aside. Remove the spline rolls and the washers, carbide bushings. There's also a thrust bearing additional washer that makes an assembly. So there's, on the bottom of the roll, basically we have a washer, a thrust bearing, and another washer as part of the assembly. And then there's an additional washer as part of that assembly that goes onto the top plate. And then we can also remove the washers on that top plate. It's always good to mark the attachment for reassembly, so you locate back exactly where you were previously prior to taking it apart. Then after you remove the 3 hex bolts and the locating washer, you could separate the middle plate from the bottom plate. That exposes the gear train mechanisms. As you can see, those are the gears that adjust your center positions of the spline rolls. And they run on the inside of that gear train on the bottom part of the plate assembly. So at this point, you can go through and clean the bottom assembly, the middle assembly, the gears, and so forth. And then we'll show you how to reinstall. To realign the gears, we've created a procedure, gear alignment instructions, drawing number 192 INST that you see here. Basically, we use gauge pins or drill rod about 16 in diameter, 2 1/4 inches long, to insert into a gauge hole onto that middle plate. And what that does is it allows us to set the gear alignment so the flat on the gear all faces the center hole. And what the pin does is it makes sure that you're on the right tooth relative to the other 3 gears. Once you do that, put a little bit of grease on the gear train. Basically, we put the bottom plate back on, so the 2 marks that you placed earlier, just an easier way to get the plates back together, get realigned to the same position that you had them during the operation. So you keep aligning till the gears are good, and then you basically flip it back around. The assembly should snap right in. You remove the gauge pins, and then you're ready to reassemble the assembly. Basically, you turn it, just make sure it's moving freely. The other thing that does is it spreads the lube around to the gear trains a little bit better, keeps everything nice and lubed inside the gear trains. We replaced the bottom plate with the 3 hex and washer assembly. So once you have the 3 hex snugged up on the bottom, you can flip it back around and start reinstalling the 3 bushings, thrust bearings, and so forth. So again, we loop the ID of the carbide bearings. Little goes a long way. You put a dab and then kind of spin it as we're inserting it. We also add some of that lube onto the bearings of the thrust bearings, and we have a dual washer that goes directly over the carbide bushings. They're usually the washers with the larger hole. The washers with the smaller hole go between the roll splines and the top plate. So the ones with the larger holes go in the bottom, ones with the smaller holes go on top. And we replace the spline rolls. And then we just reassemble the rest of the washers. Put a little dab of grease. It allows them to stick to the front plate. Then you replace the 3 socket head gap screws. And you're ready to go. Please visit us at www.cjwinner.com for additional information.